G'day, Internet. Max right here. And I have an interesting guest today, Mr. Bruce Fenton. He is running for the U.S. Senate for New Hampshire, and he is doing it on a pro Bitcoin platform. And I think it's a fascinating concept. I'm expecting to see a lot more of this over the following years. And so let's get into it and see the trials and tribulations of someone trying this, which I'm very, very keen to learn about. So, Bruce, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me, Max.
Yeah, this is super interesting. So, give me a little bit of a heads up, like what kind of led you down this path, and is it a one policy platform, or it's a lot of things and Bitcoin's a component? Talk me through your positions.
Yeah, so it is a bigger part of a policy. There's a lot to it, and Bitcoin is a part of it. And I think big picture, Bitcoin is a part of one of the reasons of why I'm running, which is the change that's going on in the world right now. So the world is going through a very radical and serious change in the way that everything works. And some people call it a fourth turning. There's a great book called The Fourth Turning. But you have these big shifts in the way that everything works, and everything changes. Money changes, borders change, economics change, who people trust change, how they think, religion, all kinds of significant things. So I think we're going through something like that, and I think Bitcoin is a big piece of it. So I want to see us go down a path of freedom. So we have the freedom to do these things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and innovation and less government control and less authoritarianism. So yeah, they're kind of related, but it is about much more than just Bitcoin.
Gotcha. So a couple of nuts and bolts questions here. Are you affiliated with a party, or are you running as an independent?
Yeah, I've historically been very independent, and I've been a libertarian, but I've been very Republican leaning. And when I was a kid, I was Republican. I'm running as a Republican now. So
Okay.
I'm an official member of the Republican Party, and I have to win primary. If I win the Republican primary nomination, then I go on to the general election. So there's two elections that I have to win.
Yes, awesome. And when did you announce your candidacy?
It was in April, so it was just recently. I got in, kind of, uh, you know, pretty. I would say late, but it's not really late for our race. Our race is very different than some of these others. Some people have been running for office for 2 years, which is kind of a symptom of a broken system, honestly. So I like this kind of race where voters are going to be able to make their decision over the summer. I'm spending a lot of time on the road over the summer. I'm going to meet everybody I can in New Hampshire, and they're going to make the decision on the best candidate. So it kind of works out to have a short cycle like this. We have one of the latest primaries in the country. So kind of a neat thing, a lot of neat things about New Hampshire elections.
Gotcha. Now, what's some of the pros and cons of this? I mean, something that jumps to mind. I think the Bitcoin community is an extremely diverse community spread out all over the world. For your immediate goals, anyway, the concentration of people that you really want to reach out to, the people who can support you achieve your first step of getting this primary, they live in New Hampshire. So I'm wondering about that. Must be a little bit of a challenge. What have you noticed about that? Overcoming those challenges, has it worked for you? And how powerful is it? Has it been for you thus far to be openly pro Bitcoin?
Yeah, my issues, I've been doing great talking to the New Hampshire voters because my issues are very much beyond Bitcoin. I talk about freedom and peace, and this is what people care about desperately right now. That's why I got into the race, because they are not happy with the lockdowns and the movement passes and mandated injections, and they're not happy with inflation and the economy, baby formula shortages, all of these kind of things. So people are very motivated. My message of getting government, out of our lives is something that I think people appreciate. There's not a ton of people where they're focusing on crypto as as their main issue, but certainly those people like me, I have a lot of crypto fans. A lot of people are interested in it because it's something that's so associated with with what I do, for sure.
Yeah, understood. So when you approach people who have not heard about Bitcoin or are dispassionate about it one way or the other, are you finding that it's a relatively short hurdle to get them interested and explain the benefits of it? Or is it something that's typically over their heads? If they're not interested in it so far, it's not something that's going to move the needle for them.
Yeah, one of the challenges that, I got into Bitcoin 9 years ago, and one of the challenges that I've had ever since then is that if you explain it, and maybe this is just my own bias because I come from investments and investment sales, if you explain it, a lot of times it seems like you're selling somebody on something, and then, which is fine. I love sales, but the problem is there's people who are rightfully resistant, and they'll think that you're a lot, or especially early on, and several years ago. It doesn't happen as much now, but some people who don't know, even now, even with a couple times with the campaign, people think that I like work for Bitcoin. So they're like, oh, this guy works for Bitcoin. He's just trying to sell you the thing he's selling. So So what I've found to be best with Bitcoin is just trying to really encourage people to do their own research and just learn on their own. So I back up from it, and this is also great in the campaign because it's more universal. I back up from it from a little bit, and I talk about, what is money? And that's something that should affect everybody, no matter what age you are, whether you care about technology or not, just asking, what makes money money? And the answer is not that politicians just get a thing and they get to call it money and they can just keep printing a bunch of it and giving it to their friends and cronies. That's not money. That's not going to be a sustainable form of money that's going to work in the world. So I like to start the conversation with just asking people about money and talking about the economy and what's wrong with it. And one of the biggest, simplest things, and this is something that, I'm actually glad you asked that because I'll try and integrate this because this is something that's a very simple but also important point. Limited supply versus unlimited supply. So we have the Fed who can just print money from thin air forever. And you have Bitcoin. One of the first things that really attracted me to Bitcoin was the limited supply, because as an investment guy, I understood that. I'm like, oh, that's scarce, it's at least scarce to the degree that there's demand. And that's very different than the Fed who can just kind of print money from thin air. So these are the kind of concepts, talking about money and what money is. And then once they understand that, then you hopefully can get into the technology, or at least they go down the right road and they'll learn on their own, which is the best way to learn.
Understood. So what I'm trying to figure out so this is something that you've been involved in Bitcoin for a while. You're a little bit passionate about it. You had a very small learning curve. All the learning was really done before you decided to enter this race. For someone else out there considering running for U.S. Senate or some other political office, maybe it's not on their radar. They don't really know anything about it. And in order for them to integrate it into their platform, there's a fair amount of work that would have to go in there and get them a fair few hurdles to jump and a lot of time and energy that needs to go into it. What I'm trying to ascertain here is, what is your advice to them? Would it be that it's worth the effort? Is it moving the needle enough in your community that's making a difference? It's bringing in voters for you?
It's an interesting question. There's a lot of politicians who are jumping on a Bitcoin bandwagon because they feel they can raise money on it. Mm-hmm. And so you have people who don't know or care anything about Bitcoin, but they're using it as a way to try and raise money because they know that's an issue people are passionate about and they know they can raise money. So that's an interesting dynamic. Now, and partly the answer to your question is, I don't really want politicians or candidates. I don't really want them digging into issues other than to the extent that I want them to leave us alone. So I don't want them to be experts to say, oh, here, I'm going to learn all about it and make a big advanced policy. I just want them to leave us alone. And I don't really care if they know anything about us or not. If I'm elected, I'm not going to know about a lot of different industries. I may not know about the dairy industry or the meatpacking industry or any number of different industries that are here in New Hampshire. And honestly, I shouldn't, because it's not my job as a politician to know about these industries. I don't want politicians mucking around in Bitcoin. It's a coincidence that I came from Bitcoin, but I don't want them to be learning about our industry. I want them to just leave us alone. And if I'm elected, I don't want to be an expert on dairy or an expert on any other industry. I want the experts on those industries to run it. If you're a dairy farmer, you do your own thing. If you're a Bitcoin miner, you do your own thing. If you're a doctor, you do your own thing. I don't want to be an expert on other industries. And that's precisely the problem, that you have these politicians in Washington, D.C. who think they're the experts. They think they know everything about everything. My opponent, Maggie Hassan, and her crony, Elizabeth Warren, they think they know better than you. They think they can sit in their fancy offices in Washington, D.C. and decide, oh, we know better than this and we know better than that, because they sit down with a few meetings and they think that they understand the industry. And sometimes those meetings are directed by enemies to the industry. They'll sit down with bankers who will tell us how bad Bitcoin is, and then they'll think that that's research. And that's precisely the problem. I don't want them making those kind of decisions. I'd rather have them just know, what I know, which is it's not my business. I'm not smart enough to know all the different industries. I want every CEO and every small business owner to make their own decisions and be their own regulator, and let the market regulate them, let the customers regulate them, not me.
Understood. I think so chatting to a few people in this world, and what they've shared with me is it's a very positive thing for a candidate for this reason. For the people who are pro Bitcoin, they are fanatical, often single issue voters. They're like, oh, pro Bitcoin, boom, I'm in. Like, yeah, you get my vote, I'm there. For people who don't know about Bitcoin, they're generally dispassionate. They're not like, oh, I'm not going to consider you as a candidate. Hang on, yeah. I have to sneeze. It's catching me. Okay, I think I made it. They're not like, oh, if you're pro Bitcoin, oh, I'm walking the other way. If you're not into Bitcoin, you're just like, well, whatever. I don't care. And so it seems to be a one-way street. There's plenty of upside and very little downside. So that kind of incentive structure will probably bring a lot more pro-Bitcoin candidates into the structure. Rightly or wrongly, goodly or badly, that's probably likely to happen. So any thoughts or words for future candidates, other people considering taking on this as an issue on their platform and stating their case? What would you advise them?
Yeah, I think what you just said hits it on the head. And that's why you have so many people. Some of them are kind of phonies. Some of them are really believers. But either way, they're all welcome, because there's people who realize that it's a low risk issue. You don't lose votes by being pro Bitcoin. Can you imagine anybody who's that bad? I mean, really, you don't want their vote. I mean, can you imagine somebody who's so bad who says, oh, he's pro Bitcoin, I'm going to vote against him? Like, no, nobody's that bad. There's a lot of people who dislike me for various reasons, but it's pretty low risk when you say you're pro Bitcoin, and you do get a lot of supporters. Really, there are single issue voters who care about this so much. So yeah, my advice is for people to participate. It can be a fun process. I'm having a lot of fun running. I think that you can get out there and talk about these issues. And, there's one more piece of that. It's a lot of upside or some upside by being pro Bitcoin. And you should be really pro Bitcoin, not just talking about it. You should be. And when I say pro Bitcoin, pro crypto, pro anti-regulation is what you should be, being against all kinds of government meddling. But there's a flip side of that. If you're one of the politicians like my opponent or Elizabeth Warren, or Brad Sherman, who goes out there who's anti-Bitcoin, you're going to have some people knocking on your door, come election season. You're going to have people like me. You're going to have people who show up. You're going to have donors. You're going to have, my opponent won't even mention me on Twitter because there's so many. She mentioned me twice and she never did it again because there's so many Bitcoin fans that will, go to bat. They care a lot about this industry. So there's a lot of supporters. And that's great because what you said, that increases education. There's a lot of people who are asking, what is this? What is this technology? And even more importantly, the big questions like what is money and how does the economy work and how do economics work? These are great questions. And so hopefully a lot more people get involved, and you can be involved, support campaigns, support people running for office. There's a big system that's been entrenched for decades, and it doesn't have our voice in it. And we have potential to have power, but we don't quite have power yet. So there's a lot of people that want to walk all over our look at New York right now. They're banning Bitcoin mining. These kind of things are, they don't have a place in a free society, but there's systems that are working it. We've got to work the other way. We've got to be just as organized, spend just as much money, get just as many people involved, and educate people, because we're on the right side. So if we get out there and educate and participate, we're going to win.
Gotcha. Now, I like your strategy, by the way. I too am an independent, not particularly loyal to any particular party, but I think Ron Paul taught us a few things in 1980. He ran as an independent. He understood that didn't really work. And 2012, et cetera, he came in and kind of took over to some degree the Republican Party. And that's the nature of this being a two-party system. I think it's the way to do it. As independent as you are, the way to do it is for independents to take over one of the existing parties. And I think libertarians are well and truly down that path when it comes to the Republican Party. So I find myself, my allegiances to the Republican Party much more so than the Democrat Party, and even the Libertarian Party or independents. For that reason, that's the way that things are going to get done, in my opinion, anyway. So I like the strategy that you've taken on there. Let me think. I would like to understand a little bit more. To me, running for office seems ridiculously daunting, and I'm kind of a little bit curious about the process. When you start, do you get much help? Is there anything come from anywhere, or just all you're out hustling? It's your networks. And what does it feel like, and what's the process? And give me an example of some of the mountains you've had to climb thus far.
That's a funny question, because I'm pretty unconventional about how I've done it. I did my announcement from my phone by myself. I've been a bit resistant to some of this sort of establishment kind of ways of campaigning. I think the whole system is broken. There's a lot of bad incentives. There's a lot of problems. There are some serious things that you need to do that the system has mastered. They've gotten very good at reaching people and getting the word out and things like that. So to some extent, you do have to play these games. I wish you didn't. I wish it was just 5 long debates that everybody would watch and then they make their decision. But there's a lot of games to be played. a long time ago when I was looking at running for office, one of the first things they told me, they said, I was talking about being anti-war and business and all these different credentials. And they said, well, you've got cute kids, I mean, so there's a lot of superficial stuff that people care about in politics. There's a lot of broken things about the system. So I'm kind of unconventional. I'm trying to do things my own way and we'll see. It's a bit of an experiment whether, how much ideas can sway people. I think that from the people that I talk to, once they hear what I have to say and what I stand for, it really resonates. So just getting the word out is going to be key. But yeah, I'm a bit resistant to the whole way the system works. It's a daunting kind of process. There's a lot of, just kind of political games. I mean, it's called politics for a reason. There's a lot of, I don't want to say nasty games. They're just part of the game. It is a nasty game. The whole thing is, but I like it. I'm glad, I love talking to voters. That's my favorite thing. Just talking to people all day long, hearing what they care about and listening to their concerns and looking at how they see America. To me, that's really, really valuable. I feel like I'm getting a PhD in what's up with the world, which is really, really valuable. It's something that I try to have, all the time. I try and know what's going on in the world. It's served me well in business,
Yeah, awesome. Bruce, let the viewers know how they can reach out to you or get in contact with you or follow you or whatever it is you want them to do. What are the next steps for them if they want to support you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is my website, brucefenton.com, and that's got all my social media. I'm pretty active on Twitter and other social media, videos. I like people who take the time. If you can encourage somebody in New Hampshire, just take 10 minutes to look. People are going to know right away because I don't mince words about where I stand. A lot of politicians they'll tell you, the experts will tell you, don't take a position on anything because anytime you say anything, you lose somebody. But I'm very open and honest. I'm controversial issues like mandated masks and mandated injections. I'm absolutely against those kind of things. Some people are for them, so I'm not the candidate for them. But if people take some time to research, they'll know where I stand. So if you know anybody in New Hampshire, send that. And also, support. I'm not big on fundraising. I wish we didn't have to do it, but it is part of the game. So people who want to support financially, I'm going to represent the whole country. All senators do. The legislation that you work on as a senator affects everybody in America. It's the top level federal laws. And so everybody's affected, even if you're in Hawaii or California or wherever you are. So, getting the word out to voters. New Hampshire voters are smart. If they understand who I am and where I'm coming from, I'm going to end up winning, and I'll win the primary and I'll win the general. So, but online is a great way to connect. And I'm all around the state. I'm driving all around the state, so I'm pretty easy to see in person. People can call my mobile phone. It's accessible. I'm on Clubhouse. I'm on Twitter Spaces. There's nobody in New Hampshire who isn't able to talk to me between now and the elections.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Bruce, thank you so much for your time. I wish you every success.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Max. You have a good one.
Cheers, man. Thanks a lot.